Good afternoon and welcome to the 2020 Educators Conference presented by Buckeye Book Fair and Tri-County Educational Service Center. My name is Andrew Johnson and I'll be your host for this afternoon's session. I want to thank everybody for taking the time out of your day to join us. Before we get started with our keynote presenter, I want to take a moment to encourage you all to utilize the chat and Q&A feature in Zoom. We'll hold questions until the end of the keynote presentation, but at that point, we'll definitely take them. We'll field them at that time. Additionally, we'll have an author roundtable after that keynote presentation, and today's session is going to last approximately 1 hour total. At the end of the presentation, I will also share a link and a QR code for you to complete a short survey so you can have a certificate of professional development contact hours issued to you, and that can be used for educator license renewal. I'm happy to introduce today our featured presenter, Shelley Pearsall. Shelley Pearsall is the author of 6 books for middle grade and teen readers. Prior to becoming a full-time author, Shelley was a teacher in the public schools, as well as working in educational departments of several parks, history museums, where she created museum theater programs. She has a BA from the College of Worcester, which is really cool because I'm in Wayne County, and a master's in education from John Carroll University. Currently, she lives in Akron. And her session today is going to focus on the One Book, One Day program. And it's focused on encouraging reading at the middle and high school levels on a system-wide basis, on a building-wide basis. So I will leave it up to Shelley. Hi, Shelley. How are you?
Hi, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me as part of One Book, One Day. I'm so excited to talk to all of you teachers and librarians and parents and just interested people out there. I'm going to be sharing how to do One Book, One Day in your school and ways to adapt it for your classroom. As you saw in the introduction, I am a former educator. And I want to say first that my heart goes out to all of you who are working so hard to educate kids under so many different circumstances. You guys are really in the trenches. You're the superheroes. And I know all of the authors join me in just really giving our love and respect for all that you're doing. All of the authors on this panel, we all come from different backgrounds and have different skills and talents. But we're here to help you in whatever way we can. And so please use our knowledge and our skills. Myself personally, I have Q&A sessions and writing workshops that I can offer virtually. And so please check out all of our websites and what we can do to help you out in these really challenging times. What I'm going to do is introduce my novel, All the Above, which is the basis for One Book, One Day. And then I'll move into how to create a One Book, One Day event in your school. I have adapted the program so that you could do this program virtually, and I'll give you some ideas about how to do that. I know some of you are in person, some of you are virtual, and some of you are a mix of both. Let me start with All the Above, though. It is a fiction novel for grades 4 to 7, generally read 4 to 7. Some younger grades read it, some older grades, but 4 to 7 is sort of the main age range. It's a former ALA notable book, and it's currently a Mathical honor book for 2020. It features diverse characters, and it also an Ohio setting. It is set in Cleveland, Ohio, and was inspired by a school in Cleveland. It's a story of 4 7th graders in a Cleveland school who decide they want to set a world record in geometry, of all things, and they decide they want to build what's called the world's largest tetrahedron pyramid. And I don't want you to let the terminology of a tetrahedron scare anybody from trying out the book. I'm going to show you what a tetrahedron is. It's actually a very simple structure. It's a type of pyramid. And here's an example of one. And it's a pyramid that's made of 4 triangles. So unlike the Egyptian pyramids, which have a square base, a tetrahedron is 4 equilateral triangles. So you wonder, how does a world record and a book come from this? Well, tetrahedrons grow by 4. So they, they grow in multiples of 4. So a single tetrahedron, 4 triangles. And then if you take 4 single tetrahedrons and join them together, you get what's called a stage 1. And then if you take 4 of these and tape them together, you get a stage 2. So this is 16 pieces. And then 4 of these joined together. So 16 times 4 is 64, and that's a 64 piece 1. And you can see this is all taped together. So it gets larger quickly. And this book was inspired by a group of kids who decided they wanted to build the largest one ever created in the world. So the school that attempted to do this in Cleveland was a real school. It was called Alexander Hamilton Middle School. And I want to show you a picture of that school. It was a Cleveland public school. So hang on a second and I'll pull up a picture. Okay, so there's Alexander Hamilton Middle School. It was a classic Cleveland public middle school. Many Clevelanders went to Alexander Hamilton. It was at the end of East 131st Street in Cleveland, close to Shaker Heights, the Shaker Heights area today. Today, the kids go to a new school called A.J. Rickoff. But I had the chance to visit this school as an author in one of my early school visits way back in 2004. And while I was there, I heard that this school had attempted this unusual world record, and they were able to show me pieces of their creation as well as some amazing photographs. And this was one of them. So this is their record-breaking tetrahedron. What you're looking at here is 16,384 tiny tetrahedrons, so much smaller than the first one I showed you. 16,384 tiny tetrahedrons. In this case, they glued them together to build what you see. So that's 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 times 4, 7 times, gets 16,384. And they wanted it to be called the Rainbow Connection. You can see that in the background of the photo after the Kermit the Frog song. And so this is all made with different colors of paper. So what you're looking at here is not something that's been spray painted. There's also a little math in how they designed this to be a 3-dimensional rainbow pyramid. To give you an idea of the beauty of this and why it just really took my breath away the first time I saw it, here's another picture. This is from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, where it was on display for a short amount of time. And again, you can see the intricacy. This was 5 months of work for the students at Alexander Hamilton. Some of them took these pieces home after school to build this. If you look really closely in the picture, toward the bottom of the picture frame, you could even see a pot of gold. And that was their own little joke. They put a pot of gold, of course, at the end of the rainbow there. So there you go. That was the one that was on display. And I want you to see the kids who worked on the project. So here is a group of the kids who worked not only on that one, but on one they built the following year. So I was just really inspired by their story. And that was the reason why I decided to write all the above. It's a book that combines fact and fiction, though. So the story itself, the characters that tell the story are fictional, but they are inspired by some of the students that I talked to and met at the school. It's a book that appeals to kids who like to make stuff. So it's definitely a hands-on story. It's also a story that if you like to cook, it's got some recipes. It has illustrations by the amazing and award-winning Javaka Steptoe. So there's one of the illustrations. So a lot of elements besides just just the story itself. It works well as a read aloud because it is a multi-voice story. So there are 4 students who tell the story along with 3 adults, and they alternate in the chapters as they tell the story. So it moves pretty quickly from voice to voice to voice as you read through the story. The best part is that it only takes 3.5 to 4 hours to read. And that's why it became a one book, one day selection, because you can essentially read it in a single school day. Now, this idea is not my own idea. About 10 years ago, I heard of several Northeast Ohio middle schools who had chosen one book, one day and decided they were going to challenge everyone in the school to try to read it out loud in a single day. And I was just really intrigued by the concept, especially using it in middle schools, reading aloud in middle school. I loved that idea. And so I took some of the concepts that they had created, put them with some of my own, and then created One Book One Day. So that's really how it started. The other reason that I wanted to share this with teachers is that 10 years ago was really the heart of the testing epidemic, we'll say, in the country. And teachers, as I traveled around to various schools, were saying, I don't have any time to read anymore. I can't even read aloud to my students. We have no time to have fun with books, which it's just test, test, test. And so I thought, well, if I create something that just says one day, then maybe that'll give teachers an excuse to say to their principals, hey, well, we can at least make a commitment to reading aloud together for one day to a community read. So it was partly motivated by trying to help out teachers a little bit and in that testing era. Although it was originally created for in-person schools, I have adapted it for the virtual and hybrid settings that we have today. You may, in a virtual or hybrid setting, have to stretch it beyond a day. I know that schools right now, the schedules are very chaotic and ever changing. So you may have to change it up a bit and do one book in 7 days, or whatever fits the school schedule. But let's move to One Book One Day now. So this is the website. I'll pull that one up. My husband, Mike, is helping me out here. So he's the off screen, the shoulder you can see right here.
Blame me when it goes wrong.
All right. So here's the One Book One Day website. We're going to move now to what is it? This photo, I should say, was taken at a school. As you can see, they put the little fireplace on the screen there. This is pre-COVID. You can tell no masks. But anyway, there's One Book One Day is an all school or all grade level one-day read, and the primary purpose is to encourage reading for enjoyment and a community experience, shared community experience. I really want to emphasize that because when I talk about this with schools, I like to emphasize that it's really important for the whole school to be involved, so that custodians read, the lunch ladies read the same book, everyone in the school, parents, siblings, to have that sense of community that you've all read a book together. It's important to include all elements of a school. So you might think that tweens and teens wouldn't really enjoy being read aloud to. Let me show you this graph. Studies have shown that 83% or 8 out of 10 kids, even older kids, 15 to 17-year-olds, 12 to 14-year-olds, say they love or like being read to a lot. And I have to tell a personal story in relation to this. When I was in college, taking my classes to become a teacher, one of the classes, the course that you take, is children's literature. And I will never forget our first day of children's literature class. The professor opened up the book Night John by Gary Paulson and began to read to us as college students. And up to that point, I had never thought about writing for kids. I was trying to write, short stories, things for adults. I just had not found my place as a writer. And as she began to read aloud from Night John, it was a light bulb moment for me. I thought, this is what I want to write. This is what I love. And I had not, I had not had a book read aloud to me since I was a kid. And it brought all of that love and energy and just the appeal of children's literature back to me. And that was really the moment when I kind of changed and decided to become a children's author. So anyway, reading aloud is good for college students too. So I said earlier that being a teacher, it was really important to me to make this easy for teachers to do, because I know that you are all under a lot of stress right now. So let me show you the schedule pages which are on the site. So this, flip back one. So at the top of the website, you'll see the bar of options, and you'll see schedule for the day. And if you click on schedule for the day, you'll find it looks like this. So basically what I did is I took a novel and I divided it into seven chunks for 7 class periods. Basically, you read aloud for 20 to 40 minutes in each of these 7 segments, and then each segment gives you a little break and has a little activity to do that goes along with it. So these segments I tried to adjust for the hybrid learning. So while in the past it might have been an assembly, now it might be a video with guest readers that could either be watched by students who are online or, in the classroom. So you'll see there for period 1, an assembly or a video with guest readers. It's a 40-minute block. And then at the end of that block, students get a worksheet. That worksheet is not only available from a teacher, but it's also available here on the website. So your students at home can just download that as well. So in terms of having guest readers and reading aloud and posting those segments online, and I know you all know this now, but just to point out, it's just if you have someone reading aloud from a published novel, you need to make sure it's only used on your school platforms and not posted on a public platform like, for instance, YouTube. So just be very cautious and mindful of that in terms of copyright. So we'll move to the next slide. I'll give you one more example here. For period 4, students or guests read, or again, this could be a video block. It's a 40-minute reading block, and then that one, the activity is to talk about it. And there's some discussion questions that you can either talk online, or obviously if you're in the classroom, that would be a discussion point. I want to point out the lunch block, which you can see up in the right-hand corner. A school has Willie Q's Barbecue. One of the characters in the book is Willie Q. He has a barbecue restaurant, and so often during the lunch hour, schools will have the cafeteria ladies participate by creating a Willie Q's barbecue for the day. If students are at home, these recipes are in the book. There's also, the recipes are also available on the website, and you can make some chocolate cupcakes at home, which is one of the recipes in the book, Willie Q's Chocolate Truth Cake. So there are ways to do this both in the classroom and at home. And okay, let's move on to the next slide. And one more, just as an example, period 5, the classroom teachers read. Again, you read it in person or online, 25 minutes of reading time, and then the kids make a list. Are kids tougher or softer than kids in the past? Why or why not? Make a list of reasons for each side. So that's the little activity that goes with it. All right, so I talked about the tetrahedron worksheet, so I want to show you what that looks like. So that's on the website. Kids can print that off, cut that out, and then they would fold that to make their make a tetrahedron, and they can decorate it. And then if they want to at home, begin joining together. And you can see the little map there at the bottom, which shows you how to join those pieces together. All you need are tape. All you need is some tape and your tetrahedrons. So I know we have almost no time for extension activities in classrooms today, but I do want to point out that there are a lot of additional activities on the website, especially if you have families that might want to take this a little bit farther and try out some of the related tetrahedron activities. I'm going to show you what some of those are. So this is a tetrahedron book report. Here is a kite project. Now these kite plans are available online. It's also an NCTM standard. So you can have, students can go to this and download some plans and create their own kites. Here's one of the recipes. I tried when I created the recipes for the story to make them as simple enough that students could make these at home and even have a little fun with creating their own barbecue sauce. So there's some suggestions about how to do that. And here again, you can see the lunch ladies with their own barbecue recipes there, or barbecue pans there. There's some writing activities because of the 7 Voices book. A lot of times students will come up with their own character to add into the mix of 7. Or they like to write what happens to one of the characters in the book after the book ends. And then finally, there are many hands-on and art connections. The artist MC Escher is known for creating tessellations and fractals, and the tetrahedron, which I don't have right here, is actually a fractal. So that's where that connection comes. You can see the cute little tetrahedron robot. So you don't have to make an official tetrahedron. You could use the shapes to create your own thing. So many fun art things you can do. I will point out that there are always kids that love the idea of making tetrahedrons, and then they just go wild with the concept. And so many times the kids will just create them on their own and build on their own at home. So speaking of that, you can see some of the school tetrahedrons here. Obviously, we can't do this right now in COVID times, but in better times, these were all student groups created as part of One Book One Day to take all the tetrahedrons that the kids created in the school on that day, and then they would put them all together. So it started out as kind of individual tetrahedrons, and then they joined them all together at the end of the day. So this is one of those clubs at the end of One Book One Day. And then, unfortunately, gravity always takes hold with tetrahedrons, and this happens after several days. The connections in any tetrahedron are very fragile, and that's an important theme of the story, that our connections to each other are tenuous, are fragile, and it takes a lot to keep those connections going. And so that's one of the messages in the book, the importance of connections and how to keep those connections. But the story is written like a tetrahedron. So it's kind of fun to talk to the kids about how does the story connect with the idea of this shape. All the characters start out as separate people, and then as the story builds, they join together like a tetrahedron. And then each character is also matches the quality of the tetrahedron. So for instance, one of the characters has a lot of anger management issues. And so he's like the sharp edges and the points. One character hides a lot of secrets in her life. And so she's like the hidden part inside of every tetrahedron. One character is the glue, and one character is the color and the jazz and just the fun. So each character, just like each tetrahedron, brings something different to the story. So that's a little introduction to the story, to what you can do. But what I want to emphasize is my hope and my goal in creating One Book One Day was not that it would just stop with all of the above. So you use my book and then you're finished with this. The idea was to give schools a chance to try it out and practice it, and then take that same concept and apply it to other books that are your favorites in the classroom. And hopefully some of the books here of the authors that are part of our group today. You can take a book that I usually like to look for a book that can be read in 3.5 to 4 hours. Just like selecting a read aloud, you want one that has cliffhangers, twists and turns that'll keep those kids interested as they go through the story. It also helps to have an action or activity component, I think, so the students can create something memorable to remember One Book One Day. And I also like to have a book that appeals to different parts of the school community. All of the above appeals a lot to kids that maybe don't always get to shine in the classroom. Those kinesthetic visual learners don't always fit in a standard classroom. And so so all of the above gives them the chance to really shine. And so I try to pick a One Book One Day book that appeals to various aspects of your school community. In these COVID times, obviously there's going to be more emphasis on videos, and we lose a little bit of that in-person, interaction and community spirit that you get in an all-school read. But I still think there's ways to capture that online, and I hope that you've had the chance to see some ways to do that. I wanted to wrap up by sharing some tetrahedron origami with you. You probably don't have your supplies in front of you right now, but I'll share a couple of ways that you can have some fun with your students online and in your classroom, creating some tetrahedrons with just simple materials that they would have around the house or that you have in the classroom. So I'll start out with one of my favorites, kind of like a magic trick actually, and that's an envelope tetrahedron. So what you want to do is you need to have envelopes that are note card size, not business class sized envelopes. So find yourself a note card sized envelope. You're going to put an X on it, and then you're going to cut out the top part of this X, so that whole top triangle. And so you'll end up with something that looks like this when you're done. Then you're going to fold on those lines you have left. So fold on the line you have left. And then you're going to fold on this line. Again, you have to fold both directions, so it's a nice strong crease. And then you're going to put that envelope together, and you're going to fold it in the middle. All right, when you're finished with that, then you open up the envelope. See, there's nothing inside. And then you're going to push this point into that pocket. So that point is going to go right into that pocket. And when you're finished, you'll have a tetrahedron. And this envelope tetrahedron is actually how the students at Alexander Hamilton first started trying to construct their world record. Unfortunately, envelopes are not very stable once the tetrahedron gets larger, so it's tough to build a large envelope tetrahedron. But that's one type. Another one you can make is just with a simple paper plate. So find yourself a paper plate. Obviously, it's a circle and not a triangle, and you need 4 triangles to make a tetrahedron. So we're going to turn this paper plate into a triangle, kind of like a piece of pizza here. There's a piece of pizza. And then you're going to fold that up. You try to make the sides pretty equal. So now I've got my triangle. And then what you're going to do is take the point and you're going to touch the bottom corner. So I'm going to fold that point to touch the bottom corner. All right. And then you're just going to crease there. Same thing with this point. You're going to touch the bottom corner, edge, sorry. And then same thing with this point, touch the bottom edge, and make a crease. And then you pull all those points up and you have your very own paper plate tetrahedron. You can have some fun. I just had some fun with some paints and turned them into some really nice painted paper plate tetrahedrons. And lastly, an easy one to make, if you have nothing else at home, no paper plates, no envelopes, all you need is a simple piece of paper. You're going to fold the piece of paper in half. Then you need to tape on this side, tape on that side. You're going to do the same thing that we did for the envelope. You're going to put a big X. So you'll end up with something that looks like this. Cut out the top part of the X. And then same thing we did with the envelope, crease on the line, fold it in the middle. And put that into the pocket and you have your own tetrahedron. Again, these are pretty fragile, so you can't build very well with them. But basically that's the same as the envelope, just made out of a piece of paper. So those are some fun origami tetrahedrons you can try at home. I know we have some questions, so I want to roll to those questions. But if you have any other questions about One Book One Day, how to adapt a story, I just finished reading, by the way, Jeremy Thatcher, Dragon Hatcher. So if you teach intermediate kids, this would be a great one, I thought, as I was reading, to adapt to One Book One Day. You could make some nice dragon related stuff with that one. Also love Rules by Cynthia Lord, another book that has nice short length and would fit well with that too. So I want to turn it over for some questions now. So I will pause.
All right. Well, thanks, Shelley. That was awesome. I especially can relate and want to emphasize the portion that you mentioned earlier before we move into the roundtable about the importance of reading like read alouds to your kids because that's how they build that oral language capacity and that's really how they develop. It's a big part of developing fluency in reading is the students actually having the opportunity to hear the way that sentences actually should sound, developing that prosody. So that's absolutely correct. And older kids they like it too. I mean, it's something that everybody can appreciate.
And everybody can share, yeah. And even kids that struggle in reading, as they get older and maybe they're not reading at their grade level, being read aloud too can give them that confidence. They can listen above their reading level.
Absolutely.
And so that can start to bridge that divide too.
Yes, for sure. So we don't have any specific questions right now. What I'll do is we'll move into the roundtable and I will I'll pull you back up. I'll have you go probably right in the middle of the roundtable if that works for you.
That sounds awesome. You guys have such a treat with the panel that's coming up. They are the Ohio's best. So I want to leave that, a lot of time for them to share the wonderful books that they've written that will, enhance your classrooms and your lives and are all wonderful read alouds.
Thanks, Shelley. We'll see you in a little bit.
Thank you.
Welcome to the 2020 Buckeye Book Fair. Thank you for joining us for this series of virtual events with Ohio authors and illustrators. The Buckeye Book Fair provides an annual celebration of literacy through author visits, educational programs for K through 12 students, and events for people of all ages. All of the books featured today and throughout the entire Buckeye Book Fair are available for purchase at buckeyebookfair.org. Should you have any questions for the presenters, please click on the Q&A button and type them in the window that appears, and they'll be answered later in the session. Margaret Peterson Haddix is a Columbus resident and has worked as a newspaper copy editor, reporter, community college instructor, and a freelance writer. In The Deceivers, the second book in her Greystone Secrets series, the kids from the first novel continue their quest to rescue their mothers, and to do so must return to an alternate dimension where truth is illegal. Terri Libenson is an award-winning cartoonist and author from Cleveland. Told in alternating past and present chapters, her latest book, Becoming Brianna, is a heartwarming story unfolding over the 8 months that shy Bree prepares for her bat mitzvah. Dandi Daley Mackall is the author of over 400 books for children. Her first big story was Why I Want to Be Bat Boy for the Kansas City A's, written when she was a 10-year-old tomboy. In her latest books, God is Always With Me and God Takes Care of Me, each featuring one simple psalm, she uses sweet, fun language to make God's Word accessible for children ages 2 to 5. Cleveland author Tricia Springstubb is the author of many books for young readers, including picture books, chapter books, and middle grade novels. Her latest book, Khalil and Mr. Haggerty and the Backyard Treasures, is a heartwarming tribute to the love of good neighbours and to the strength of intergenerational and intercultural bonds.
All right, so we will get started. I'll have Terri Libenson first. Hi, Terri, how are you?
Hi, I'm just trying to bring up my video.
There you go.
There we go. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good, good.
Awesome. Well, do you want to tell us, just kind of starting off, do you want to tell us a little bit about one of your books and how it might be used in the classroom?
Yeah, sure. So before I was having internet issues, but it's all back now. So I actually have a little presentation if you want to see that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you don't mind me sharing.
Right ahead.
Okay. Okay. Let's see if that works. Can you guys see? Okay, great. Okay, so let me just get everything in place here. Okay, so I am the author of the middle grade series, Emmy and Friends. This is my latest book, Becoming Brianna. It's the 4th book in my series. It came out this May, and it's something a little different. Normally I have 2 leading characters, and each of their chapters kind of switch back and forth between them. But this book is a little different. It's centered on the character Brianna and her alone, and the chapters switch off between the past and the present. So the past takes place over the course of 8 months leading up to Brianna's bat mitzvah, and the present day chapters take place on the day of the event itself. So along the way, there's a lot of friendship drama, personal challenges. Brianna's constantly questioning her belief system, but it's all told with a lot of humor and hopefully a lot of heart. And it was definitely one of my favorite books to write. And I hope everybody, teachers and students, enjoy it too. These are all the books in the series. I rotate all the characters of this Lakefront Middle School universe. To me, that keeps it kind of fresh and interesting and challenging. I'm working on my 5th book right now, and this time it's about a boy, so that's definitely a a unique challenge for myself. So here's just some sample pages from Becoming Brianna. This is a 2-page spread from one of the illustrated, what I call the illustrated novel portion of the book, where there's a lot of text, and then it's punctuated with these little illustrations and lots of labeling, just lots of fun stuff. And here's one of the graphic novel portions. So this takes place during the present time in Becoming Brianna. So this is before her bat mitzvah, but on the same day. So you can see how stylistically different each of the chapters are. So as educators, I'm sure you'd love some suggestions for classroom topics surrounding the book. The next few pages are themes and questions and activities, just to give you a starting point. And these can be done easily either in the classroom or virtually. So to start out with, I thought I'd break it up by themes because there are quite a few in Becoming Brianna. So the first one is faith. And when I address faith, I'm trying not to be overtly religious. I want to explore it, but in a very secular way so that these books appeal to everybody, not just someone who's having a bar or bat mitzvah. At the same time, I think it's great to introduce kids to different cultures and ideas and explore that. So Brianna introduces topics of faith in a very, like I would call it, a very universal way and anecdotal way. So throughout the book, Brianna questions why she's having a bat mitzvah. As the story progresses, she starts to find meaning in it. So here are some questions that you can ask your students and some activities that are also involved in this. So list some examples of how Bree starts to find meaning in the day. Bree likes a challenge. What are the challenges she faces as she prepares for her bat mitzvah? Bree isn't sure she wants to have a bat mitzvah, but ultimately decides to. Have you ever taken a leap of faith and did something unexpected? Was it worth it? And finally, how does the book title reflect the story? What would the title of your story be? I get a lot of emails from students giving me suggestions on titles for my books, so that kind of spawned that idea. So another theme is community. In the story, Bree learns who has her back and who doesn't. She ultimately finds her tribe. Questions to ask. What are some ways Bree's friendships are tested? Activity. Pick a character whose viewpoint isn't featured and write a short story from their perspective. Bree's mother relays a story from her past about how she found her community. How is Bree's story similar or different? Who are the people in Bree's close-knit community and why? Who are in yours? And finally, do you think everyone in a community has to be similar and why? And finally, the last theme that I highlight here is relationships, and that's a theme that is that pretty much runs throughout all my books in my series. I love to focus on relationships. The story highlights the many ups and downs of Bree's relationships with family and with friends and family. Questions to ask. What are Bree's most significant relationships in the book and how do they evolve? Emmy and Dev warn Bree that popular Zoe is using her, but Bree doesn't want to listen. Do you know why? Activity. Write an advice column to Bree, like Dear Abby. Bree experiences many relationship conflicts and resolutions. Describe 3. Activity. Draw a comic strip or write a short story about a relationship conflict and resolve it in your own way, good or bad. And finally, Bree and Em have their issues, but they always work it out. Which character from the book would you most like to be friends with and why? And it can be an adult. She has an aunt in here that I know I personally like to be friends with. And last but not least, up on my website, I actually have a publisher's educator's guide for my first 3 books. And it's also appropriate for Becoming Brianna and other graphic novels. And I thought I'd also throw up my Brianna ones there too. I haven't done so yet, but I can definitely do that. So that is pretty much it, but you should be able to find everything up on my website, which is just terrilibenson.com. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And if you get a chance, could you type in your contact information, like your website, into the chat?
Sure.
That way it'll pop up for everyone who's attending.
Absolutely. I'll do that now.
Thank you. It was great
Thank
to
you.
hear from you.
Thank you so much.
We're going to move on to Dandi Mackall. Hi, Dandi. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Let's see here. Start the video. Here we go.
All right. Dandi was actually on for our Young Authors Conference earlier, actually at the end of last week. So this is, and then I think she was on another one of these meetings too. So she's really putting in her work the last couple weeks here, last week and a half. So we appreciate you. We appreciate you attending again.
Oh, thank you. I love this. And the intro said about my young books, but I write lots of things for adults and young adults and middle grade. And I want to talk to you about Larger Than Life Laura. I want to make sure you can see that.
Yep, we got it.
Yeah, that's okay. This book surprised me. And I think it's one of the strongest stories I've ever written. It's about a gal who is looked down upon by everyone else in her classroom until another girl comes who is going to receive even more of the bullying. And so it's their story, and yet there's hope in there. And I would love every school to have this. Just, it's a way to address bullying, but it also teaches totally how to write. Everything I know about writing is in this book. I was a third of the way through the story before I realized that what was happening was each chapter focused on a part of writing, but the action was actually what's going on at the same time. I'll just have, here's the content, table of contents. Character, the beginning, frozen moment, villain, setting, dialogue, opposition, and it goes all the way through conflict, all the way through to climax and resolution. And in the climax chapter, it's the climax of the book. So it's kind of a way to sneak into teaching the writing. But let me just read it because there's not a good way for me to describe it.
Okay.
Chapter 1 is character. This isn't about me, this story, I mean, so already you got a reason to hang it up. At least that's what Mrs. Smith says. She teaches in Paris, Missouri, how to write stories, but I think she'd about 100 million times rather be in Paris, France, writing her own stories. So anyway, she says you got to start with a character when you start your story. And since I'm the first character you hear about in my story, that should mean it's about me, Lainey Grafton, age 10 or nearly so, small for her age, but tough as a horseshoe, thanks to 3 big brothers and 1 bathroom, stringy brownish hair and brown eyes, not much to look at, but couldn't make a living scaring crows neither, but it's not. Now here's writing a book all in 1 paragraph, and then it plays out. But it's not about me, because once you get yourself a character for your story, Mrs. Smith says you give that character a problem, and the whole rest of the story is about the problem getting bigger and bigger, and the character's getting to be a better and better person, and then the character solves a problem, and that's it, the end. Only it's not me what's got the problem. And I'm not a better person than I was 3 months ago when all this stuff happened. Just ask my daddy or any of my 3 stupid brothers if you don't believe me. So like I said, this story is not about me. And Mrs. Smith, if you're out there reading it, well, I'm just sorry about that, but that's the way it is. Sometimes stories don't work out like they're supposed to. And so it goes through and you learn every part while it's actually happening. But the main character is Lainey, who doesn't want you to get to know her well. She's talking about larger than life Lara, and who changes the classroom by returning kindness for meanness. And it's not just a happily ever after ending, but things have changed. And it's an opening to talk about writing, but it's also an opening to talk about bullying. And with the book, you get a resource guide.
Oh, wonderful.
And it goes through everything from discussion questions to curriculum and lesson plans and language arts and even social studies. And so I think it's been a pretty easy book to teach, and some that kids never forget, like Laura. Can I say one more thing about?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
Because this also is something that I think would be great in any middle school and high school. It's a different look at World War II than I think we usually get. It's the compassionate look. My parents, it's their story. They met in boot training and were Army doctor and Army nurse. They married after like 2 or 3 weeks. And then mom was sent to France and a burned out bread factory to be a nurse. And my dad was with a mobile unit, a British unit for some reason. And they went into Germany, and they had a couple rendezvous, but mostly they wrote letters back and forth, and they were good writers, and they describe what war is really like and the consequences of it. And I didn't even know that we had those letters until they died, and they left me an army trunk, and in it were over 600 letters that they'd
incredible.
written back and forth for the remainder of the war as newlyweds, but going through all this stuff in different places and describing what it was like to be there. So, and the last one is, this one won the Edgar Award for Best Young Adult Mystery, The Silence of Murder. And a bunch of schools like to use that with kids too.
Well, thank you for taking the time to share those 3 awesome resources that hopefully teachers will take a look at. And I know that Larger Than Life, Laura, that it seems like a lot of effort and time has been put into really making sure that teachers can utilize it and really weave it into their instruction. So I know they appreciate that very much. So
Well,
thank you.
Thanks a lot for the time. I love this stuff.
All right, next up, we're actually going to bring back Shelley Pearsall. So Shelley, I wanted to give you a little bit more time to talk about maybe another book that you think teachers could benefit from. Being a teacher yourself, I'm sure that's pretty easy for you to speak on.
Another one of mine, because I love Dandi Daley's Larger Than Life Laura. If I can
Well, you can keep talking about Dandi's.
Yeah,
that's
she
fine.
does. If you're somebody
I'm sure
that
she won't mind.
if you're somebody that wants to teach, I mean, it has so many writing lessons in it, and it's the character showing you those aspects of writing. So those teachers out there that really focus on how to show and teach writing, that book will show and teach writing. So sorry that I just had to talk. But the one
Don't be sorry.
Yeah.
You're so sweet.
I'll share my new one just to give a intro to it. It came out right before COVID, so it's one of the COVID casualties.
Yeah, that's right. The lost COVID books. Yeah.
So anyway, Things Seen from Above is a story that I really like. Again, stories about kids that are kind of outsiders. And so Things Seen from Above is about a boy who's an outsider, and he is neurotypical. So he's somebody that he doesn't really communicate much with other kids. He likes to draw on the school playground, and nobody really knows that his designs on the playground have a meaning and a purpose until a 6th grader who is kind of helping to monitor recess as a buddy discovers the meaning of those drawings when she sees them from above. And it's a story about what does it mean to change your perspective, to see, to understand someone else, and how that change of perspective can change an entire school and an entire community. It's my first book with illustrations throughout, because if you're going to write a book about perspective and things seen from above, you probably should have illustrations. And they were done by a wonderful Chinese artist. That's an example of one of them. So a little boy walking through the snow. It's a 4th to 6th grade novel, but a lot of connections to art and to building community.
Great. And I forgot to ask Dandi to put her contact information in the chat so participants could see it. And Shelley, if you could do that as well, that would be wonderful. Do you do virtual visits for schools and classes?
I do, yes, especially writing workshops. I really like to, as much as, the virtual medium makes some things very difficult. I do find that it has some advantages for writing because in a typical classroom, you get everybody answering at once, but the
Yeah.
virtual medium allows you to focus on that a little bit. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, definitely writing workshops and more interactive things online. Sorry, I have to take this. I don't know what's happening on my computer here, but
You're
no,
fine.
okay.
No big, you're all right.
Yeah.
If you can't get the your contact information in the chat, that's okay, because I should note to everyone who's participating that at Buckeye Book Fair, links to everyone's websites are provided underneath each author too. So, speaking a little bit more on your writing workshops, could you detail a little bit about what maybe one or two of your workshops are like?
Sure. The virtual ones, one that I have as a video, which I'll actually be doing for Buckeye Book Fair as well tomorrow.
Yep.
And that's open to anybody. You can watch that from 1 to 2. Any classroom can log on to that. But that one is where kids will create a character from a shoe. Obviously, this number of shoes is going to be limited by the fact of how much I can hold up on the screen, but the brainstorming will not be limited. And like I said, because it'll be not a classroom situation, the kids will not have the chance to interact with me on the screen like they normally would in a classroom. That one in a classroom virtual setting, the kids would be sharing ideas through the chat room. And brainstorming with me that way, or live brainstorming as well. But it'll be a little different in terms of that. So that I also have a poetry one using the chat room. So teaching kids how to do poetry, but also using the chat to gather ideas and create our own poem. So those are the two interactive, and then the usual Q&A and presentations and that sort of thing. But I know that teachers are using all kinds of mediums, and so I really, and all the authors I'm sure do this as well. I just really want to do things that do whatever I can to help out the situation that teachers are in. So if you're a teacher that needs a video, that you're reading one of my books and you need a video next week, I'm more than happy to jump in and send you a video that you can use with your students. So whatever we can do to help, we're here here to do that.
Don't say that too loud. You'll be making videos from now until Christmas time.
That happened in the spring. We did a lot of videos here. It became the video studio.
Well, I'm sure teachers appreciate it. So thank you very much. And I'm excited about the session tomorrow as well. So that's from 1 to 2 p.m. If any teachers who are participating this evening, remember you can have your students attend that session tomorrow at 1 o'clock.
They will need paper and pencil. So they will be writing. Yes, not just watching me. You're going to have to do some work.
Right. That's right. For sure.
Okay.
Well, thank you. We're going to move on to Margaret Peterson Haddix. Hi, Margaret. How are you? Oh, Margaret, I think you might be
I did the video and not the unmuting. Sorry about that. I was like, nobody's responding.
That's all right.
How are you? Sorry about
the
that.
problems of Zoom. Don't worry about it.
Exactly. We should all be experts by now, but somehow we can still make mistakes. So the book that I had come out in April, which, right at the time of the pandemic, is The Deceivers, which I'll try not to make that so reflective.
Yep.
It is the second book in the Greystone Secrets series, which just does start with The Strangers. And there's a huge probability question at the heart of it, because the book starts out with 3 kids finding out that 3 kids with the exact same first names, middle names, ages, and birthdays have just been kidnapped in a totally different state. And of course, while they're kind of thinking that seems kind of too bizarre to just be a coincidence, then their mother suddenly announces that she has to go away on a business trip. And they're pretty sure that there's a connection between these other kids being kidnapped and their mother's business trip. And they're right. And it takes them a long time, though, to figure out what it is. And over the course of them kind of trying to solve this mystery, they have to solve a lot of codes, and definitely secret codes. And there's a lot of complications like that they have to go through. So it's been really fun when I've talked about this book with kids at schools. We've done code breaking exercises, and I've demonstrated things about probability and a lot of math, which is not my usual area of specialty. It's been very fun to talk about it with kids. And I've also been doing a lot of virtual visits where I talk about books that I typically talk about when I'm doing school visits. Among the Hidden is probably the one that I talk about the most. It's about a boy who is a third child in a place where people are only allowed to have 2 children. And beyond that, in terms of what I'm doing with virtual visits, I'm really looking to schools to let me know what they're interested in having me do. And, we're all kind of learning on the fly here. And so I've done presentations about any of my books, kind of adapting it from what's done in person to what's available, doing it as a virtual visit. And I do also have discussion guides for many of my books, all the ones that I've mentioned so far, on my website. So that's available as a resource for teachers as well.
Oh, great. That's awesome. So in terms of some of the lessons that you envision students learning from your books, could you go into a little bit of more depth with what you think some of maybe the underlying themes or lessons that kids can take away from your books are?
Sure. It totally depends on the book. Some of them have been a kind of some correlation to social studies lessons with Among the Hidden. I've seen a lot of that happening, talking about forms of government and the difference between democracy and a totalitarian government, which is what's going on in Among the Hidden. I have a book called Uprising, which is a historical novel set in the early 1900s. And it gets used a lot with 8th grade social studies curriculum in terms of talking about the progressive era. And so lots of different topics like that.
That's great. It sounds like your latest book, it reminds me just how you explain it a little bit like an escape room type of process that kids can follow. So
there have been those comparisons. Yes, that there's an element of that definitely happens.
Okay, well, cool. I'm sure that sounds like it'd be a lot of fun for kids.
Right.
Would you mind typing in your contact
Sure.
information into the chat, and then that way our participants will have access and they can contact you.
All right.
Thanks, Margaret.
Mhm.
And then we are going to finish up with Tricia Springstubb. Hi, Tricia.
Hey, hi.
Tricia was also one of our young author presenters as well. So we appreciate her coming back in.
Well, thanks for having me again. The intro sort of, it focused on my most recent book, which is a picture book. So I'm glad that you got to hear about that because it's a book of my heart. But as far as middle grade and tween books go, it's a pretty broad range. And of course, kids in those ages read at, very different levels. So I have three books that I'll just talk about really briefly, and they sort of span the whole range of what a middle grade novel can be, I think. This is Cody and the Fountain of Happiness. It's the first book in a 4-book chapter book series illustrated by Eliza Wheeler. And Cody, the main character, deals with all the everyday things that loom so large in kids' lives, friendship, problems at school, trying to make the right choice, family, just all those things, neighborhood drama. She lives in a neighborhood that is very much like mine here in Cleveland Heights. These books are, because there are 4 of them, I wrote them as standalones, but especially if kids read all 4 books, I've had a lot of teachers in 2nd and 3rd and 4th grade tell me that they make great read alouds. because they're very funny and there are illustrations. Kids can sort of zone in on what on character, I think, in these books. You know, Cody's a really big-hearted but very impulsive kid, and she makes a lot of mistakes. Like we all do. So it's a chance to talk about character, you know, strength and flaws, and how characters can change and grow and learn new things over the course of a narrative. And I've also had teachers tell me that they've had their classrooms do some of the things that Cody and her friends do, which is learn how to make a catapult to shoot marshmallows. And also how to make up their own words, because there's not a word for what they mean. And one of my favorite things that I've seen schools do is to create a big fountain from paper with all kinds of paper shooting out of it, on which kids have written down the things that make them happy. So it's their own personal fountain of happiness. So that's Cody. Moon Penny Island is another middle grade novel, and it was inspired by a real island here in Lake Erie, Kelly's Island. This is a story about a tiny island with some big secrets, and anyone who's been to Kelly's Island will recognize so much that I borrow from the real place. And this is a really a great example of if teachers want to teach setting, because sometimes setting is just seen as a backdrop or like a poor relation to plot and character. But in this book, setting really forges character and drives plot. And so it's at the center of it all. Also because it is a novel and is sort of about an ecosystem. There's a strong science strand. There's a lot in it about fossils and fossil records, and evolution, and the idea that most of us think that evolution means the survival of the fittest, but really what evolution teaches us is that every creature, every plant, from even the smallest, the ones that seem least important, have a powerful role to play in the web of nature. And I focus on Ohio's official state fossil, which is the trilobite,
Yes.
as an example of that. I mean, if you go to a natural history museum, everybody rushes past the dusty cases of trilobites to look at the dinosaurs. But really, trilobites were one of the first creatures to develop sight. And that is a pretty important thing for us creatures. So that ties in with the theme of, you know, learning how to really see, not just to look, but to see, and not just through your own eyes, but through the eyes of others too. And this book, like I think pretty much everybody here, it was one of the books that was chosen to be a Choose to Read Ohio selection. And so the State Library of Ohio made just an incredible toolkit full of discussion questions and hands-on activities that classrooms and kids can do in response to the book. And that's all on my website.
That's incredible.
And just real quickly, the third book, and then this book goes from maybe to the outer reaches of what middle grade is. I think it's more for like kids from 6th grade and up every single second. It's about a girl named Nella who lives in a small, kind of sheltered ethnic neighborhood. And her life begins to change in small ways, her friendships changing in kind of medium ways. The Catholic school that she's gone to is being shut down. And then in large and really far-reaching ways when her best friend's older brother is involved in the tragic shooting of an unarmed Black man, and the consequences for the community and the larger the world. So this book, I wrote it really hoping that it would be a book that would provoke a lot of discussion among kids and adults. So again, on my website, there are many questions that kids can discuss, talk about, and write in response to. And just one example I'll give you is that the book also deals with time. It goes back and forth in time. And kids can discuss, how has the past influenced my life? What I've been taught, and what my family has given me, how that's made me who I am. And also when there comes a time that you might want to question some of that, and find your own voice and the power in your own thoughts and identity. So that can be, of course, personal narrative or persuasive essay. There's lots and lots that can be written in response to it. And also one last thing about this book is Nella lives in Little Italy, which is a neighborhood that I love here in Cleveland. And so there's a lot about the immigrant background and experience, the Italian art and culture, and of course food. So kids can delve into that, and also just talk about the richness of the immigrant experience in this country and what it has given us as a country. So yeah, and once again,
it never ceases to amaze me the timeliness of the books. Really, over this last week, all of the authors, I think almost on a daily basis, have presented at least one book that is timely for us as a wider community. So I really appreciate that, and I know that others appreciate it as well. So thank you.
And it's a wonderful thing. Some of these difficult questions, I think books can really create a safe space for kids to consider them and to talk about them, and to share thoughts. So yeah, thanks for adding that, Andrew. Yeah, and I would just echo both Margaret and Shelley, and I'm sure everybody on this panel, in that how grateful we all are to you teachers for what you're doing now, and how we understand as best we can the challenges that you're under. And I too am here to do whatever I can to enhance any use of any of my books, or just in general, the writing process, and so please, yes, be in touch and let us know what you need and how we can connect with you. Yeah, and I'll put my website in the chat too. So.
Perfect, thanks. You took the words right out of my mouth. Well, we're coming up on the end of today's session. I want to take a minute to thank everyone who joined us today, especially our keynote presenter, Shelley Pearsall. It was really great to hear from everyone. I'm going to share my screen really quickly here. If you have questions for us specifically, for either myself or Buckeye Book Fair, our contact information is on the screen right now. My email is that first one up, tsc_anjohnson@tccsa.net. Feel free to contact me. Additionally, I want to recommend that you visit Buckeye Book Fair online at buckeyebookfair.org. The book fair is going on right now. So the books that you saw in today's session, they are available. So go there if you are interested. And then additionally, our Tri-County ESC website is listed as well. And if you are in need of contact hours, professional development certificate is available. Just use the QR code there, or you can fill in the URL that I've listed in option 1. And I'm going to actually post this really quick into the chat here. That way we can all see it. Well, I may not. My computer seems to be running a little slow, but I got it. Here we go. All right, so that's in the chat there if you are in need of those contact hours. And then last but not least, I want to remind everyone that we do have one more session tomorrow, one more educator conference session tomorrow from 4 to 5 p.m. So I encourage you to attend as well, because that'll be a really great kind of bookend to the whole event. So thank you so much for taking time out of your evenings to be here with us, and look forward to hopefully seeing you tomorrow.